You are listening to Smart Women's Dating Podcast, episode number 90. Welcome to Smart Women's Dating Podcast. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help smart, independent women attract the love they deeply desire without having to chase or settle. This podcast will give you the mindset, tools, and insights you need to finally crack the code to your love life. Are you ready? Then let's go! Hey there! So, I have something really big to celebrate today as I'm recording this episode. The downloads have just surpassed 100,000. That is so crazy. 100,000 downloads since early January 2023. And I am so grateful for all of you, for the time that you spend on listening to the episodes and the attention that you give this podcast. Those of you who give me feedback, but also those of you who don't. Because I know that if you come back and listen again and again, it's of course because you feel it's helping you in one way or the other. So I am really grateful for all of you because I think that time and attention is the most valuable resources we have as human beings. And therefore, when you sit down and spend your time even on just listening to part of the episodes, it means a lot to me. I also must say that every time I look at that number and I look at the different cities and countries where someone has downloaded the podcast, I feel a little bit shaky because it's a lot of people who had my voice in their ear. And that's of course exciting, but also a little bit scary to think about. Anyway, I appreciate you all so much, and I wanted to celebrate with you even though when I publish this episode, it's going to be in a couple of weeks. So we are already at, 101,000 or something like that. But 100,000 downloads, that is really a reason to celebrate. So thank you so much. Now, speaking of numbers, I went into my statistics the other day and looked at what were the episodes that were downloaded the most and where people listened the most. And I was a little bit surprised to see that some of the episodes I published all the way in the beginning, like in March 2023, I published a mini-series of 3, and they have been so frequently downloaded. And so I thought, okay, but why not republish these episodes? Because apparently they must have helped some of you. And I know from myself, when you start listening to a new podcast, you don't necessarily go all the way back to the beginning and listen to the first episodes. And even if you are a loyal listener, then sometimes it's actually nice to re-listen to some of the episodes that were useful. So therefore, what I'm going to do today and the coming 2 Thursdays, I'm going to publish this mini-series again, because for those of you who are new, you might not have listened to them because they're all the way down in the bottom. You have to scroll a lot. And those of you who are loyal listeners and who have been there all the way from the start, I think it's still a good reminder to listen to this again because it is about emotional availability. And there are 3 episodes. The first one is about how to recognize if a man is emotionally available or not, coming from the realization that we don't always see that. We don't really know what to look for if we haven't seen that, if we haven't had a lot of experience with that. So therefore, I give you here 8 signs that you are dating an emotionally unavailable or available man, how to see the difference. And I hope you enjoy it. Hey friends, I have a confession to make. That's always a great way to start a podcast episode, right? I hope you're curious now. But before I tell you what it is, I want to let you know that this is the first episode in a mini-series of 3 about emotional availability. And the second one that drops next week is going to be about why we keep falling for emotionally unavailable men and how to break that pattern. And then the third one is going to be about being emotionally available to yourself and what that even means. So, back to my confession. I was really going back and forth with this episode because I was wondering if it would be useful or not. And then I found a way to put it together that I feel can be useful to you. And I want to share with you the reflections I had about it because there is a message in there about what I want for you and why I decided to make this particular episode. I wanted to give you some guidance on how to recognize emotional unavailability in a man, because I know some of you find it difficult, and I did too in the past. And I know some very intelligent women among my clients and women that I've talked to throughout the years who do not recognize the signs that a guy is offering them crumbs and that they can have so much more. It's like if you never tasted really good chocolate, then how would you know that you can have something better than what you're used to? And if this is what we had in past relationships too, and we learned to not trust our feelings or to ignore them, and many of us have developed a high tolerance for struggles and suffering, then it just feels normal. It can be difficult to recognize the signs that he's not ready for a serious commitment or the emotional connection that you want. And the reason you want to recognize that is, of course, to not spend months or even years on someone who's in doubt about how much he really wants a commitment with you. You want to avoid the heartbreak and frustrations that follow with that. But I also don't want to give you a list of red flags, because that would just make you over alert and start looking for red flags. And we all know what happens if we start looking for them. We will find them, or we will find something that looks like it. And that would not be doing you a service. I actually, in general, am not a big fan of looking a lot for red flags. I want you to be able to see them, but I don't want you to search for them, because that's where we potentially get into self-sabotage. So then I thought, hey, what if I do the opposite? I give you signs that you found a really good man. But then that just felt a bit too much like candy floss. So instead I decided to give you both at the same time. What does it look like when a man is emotionally available, and what does it look like when he isn't? Because I think this has more value in the sense that it always helps more to understand a concept when we see the contrast between when something is not working and when it is. It's more illustrative, and I hope it can help you develop your own sense of evaluating this. And this leads me to what it really is I want with this episode, because the ultimate goal for me is that you develop a skill of evaluating a connection. Evaluating the connection you have with a man. Not in order to make him right or wrong, but in order to see, is it in alignment? Is this connection in alignment with what you want? Because this skill is not something we are born with, and we don't learn it. In fact, most of us learn how not to do it. Many of us don't have the greatest role models to look at, and maybe in our past relationships we've tolerated things that we later on realize we're not okay with. So we have to unlearn a lot of things and then start learning from scratch. And I want to help you be able to develop this skill of recognizing emotional availability and the behavior that can be the basis for a healthy, long-lasting, loving relationship. First of all, let's get clear on what does it even mean to be emotionally unavailable. If you Google this, you will get a million different answers, ranging from almost a clinical diagnosis to just someone who isn't mature and ready for a deep connection. So I'll share with you what I mean when I talk about it here so that we are on the same page. An emotionally unavailable person, and that can be a man or a woman or any variation of that, is someone who is not comfortable feeling their feelings, sharing them with others, or being attentive or responsive to others' emotions. They are not interested in a serious commitment. They have fear of commitment and they have fear of emotional intimacy. However, they do not fear physical intimacy. There can be many reasons why they are like that, and for many it's just a question of emotional maturity and not being ready for a commitment, which, by the way, has nothing to do with age. And for some, it can be due to past experience, like having had a close relationship with someone who were very needy or controlling. And for others, it can be a phase after a divorce, for instance. Some are emotionally unavailable until they meet the person that makes them want to open up and make an effort. So it doesn't have to stay like this forever. But the problem is that this person doesn't necessarily tell you that they cannot commit, and maybe they don't even realize it themselves due to lack of self-awareness. So they could be sending you mixed signals. And his behavior could seem selfish, but it's not necessarily coming from a bad intention. It's just a lack of ability to connect emotionally with you. However, in the long run, his intentions are not that important if you get hurt. It doesn't matter what the intention was if someone sticks a knife in your heart, right? Someone who's emotionally unavailable can also be a player, but he isn't necessarily. And a player, the way I see it, is someone who performs a level of manipulation. They're usually very good at knowing exactly what to say and do to get you where they want you to be, which is accommodating to his needs without expecting anything back. He's the kind of hot and cold guy that will smooth talk you and charm you and then disappear for days or weeks. He is the breadcrumber, only offering you exactly what you need to stick around and nothing more. On the other hand, an emotionally available man, he is emotionally mature and not afraid of expressing his feelings for you, or you expressing your feelings. He wants a deep connection and he's ready for a long-term commitment. He wants to find a woman that he can get to know for real. He wants to prioritize her in his life and plan a future with her. Basically, this is a man who, if you like his personality and values, could be a long-term partner for you. Now, I have identified 8 signs that can help you see the difference between when someone is emotionally available and when they are unavailable. So, let's just jump into it. Number 1. He says he is just looking to have fun. That would be the emotionally unavailable man. And this might seem too obvious, and why would you even have the slightest hope of getting into a serious relationship with someone if he says up front that he isn't looking for that? But here is how it can be tricky. If you tell yourself, I'm also just looking for fun, knowing that you are actually deep down looking for a serious relationship, but since you don't believe it's going to happen anytime soon, you tell yourself that it's better just to have fun and have a casual relationship than nothing. And then you decide to approach dating with this idea, I'm just going to have fun, and then if it develops into something more, that's fine. And so you start dating him, and he might show behavior in the beginning that could be perceived as maybe more involved. Maybe he's more involved than just casual. For instance, he writes you every morning, he might bring you flowers, he sends you sweet little messages throughout the day of how he's thinking of you, and so on. And then you start developing feelings for him, and if you've been intimate with him now, you will of course feel even more attached to him. And then at some point you might want to know where you stand, and you start a conversation about it, and that's where you realize that he hasn't changed his mind at all. He still is only looking for a casual relationship. He's not interested in anything serious, and he will say, I never said I was looking for a committed relationship. And you know it's true, and you wish you would have not allowed yourself to get caught in emotions with him. So my advice for you here is that if he says he isn't looking for a serious relationship, believe him. Don't tell yourself that you can change his mind or convince him into something else. And if he doesn't mention anything on his dating profile or you meet him organically, then ask him what he's looking for. Don't be afraid of telling him what you want. It's very high value to be able to value yourself enough to tell him what it is that you want for yourself in your life. Not saying that it has to be with him, just that you have ambitions for your love life and you are owning that. And if he isn't clear about what he's looking for, then don't even go on a date with him. Let him go and make space for the many interesting men who are looking for and ready for a serious commitment. So, the emotionally available man, on the other hand, he will want you to know that he's looking for a serious relationship with the right woman, and he will want to know what you are looking for. It's not a scary thing for him to talk about. It's not scary for him if you ask. He doesn't feel awkward about it. To him, it's the most natural part of getting to know each other, to find out what each of you want from a potential connection. It's a very valid question for him. So that was sign number 1. And sign number 2 is he doesn't prioritize you. And again, that's the emotionally unavailable man. He doesn't take much actions. He doesn't invite you, but he might say yes if you invite him. Or it could be that for weeks he doesn't have time, and then all of a sudden he asks you if you can meet in 30 minutes. Or he cancels a date last minute without really showing any sign of remorse. He might tell you that he can't really plan dates. He has some lame excuse as to why it's not working in his life. This is low committal energy, in low effort and with poor excuses, and you might buy into it if you really like him and find him attractive. But it's also a sign that he is not willing to make an effort, and your connection is not important enough to him to prioritize you, because anyone can make plans. Just think of how good most of us are at catching a flight. Very rarely we forget it or are late. It does happen, of course, but it's really, really rare. So if it's important enough, of course he can make a plan with you. On the other side, the emotionally available man, he will want to invite you. He wants to get to know you. He wants to plan dates with you, and he doesn't cancel unless it's extremely urgent. He gives you enough time to plan because he wants to make sure that you're available, and he values your time and attention. Sign number 3. His words don't match his actions. Again, that's the emotionally unavailable man. He is not reliable. He has inconsistent behavior. For instance, he could say that he want to call you, but then he doesn't. Or he could say he want to see you in the weekend, and then you never hear from him. This is a sign that he doesn't want you to count on him. He doesn't want you to see him as an option for something serious, and he doesn't value your connection enough to make an effort to follow through on his promises. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he takes pride in being reliable, in keeping his word. He follows up with actions when he says he's going to do something, and he continues showing up for the longer term, not just 2 or 3 weeks. This is second nature for him. It doesn't feel like something that requires a special effort for him, and especially not when it's related to the woman that he's pursuing. Sign number 4. His needs matter more than yours. Again, this is the emotionally unavailable man. Everything is on his terms. What he wants and feels like is always more important than what you want, and he doesn't check in with you, and he's not open to stretch or compromise. He might even question your boundaries. And then if you at some point express that you need something from him, he will avoid responding to that or make up an excuse as to why it's not possible for him to do that. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he cares about how you feel. He wants to make sure that you're okay, and he puts you first, especially in the beginning, to make sure that you feel good in his company. He also respects your boundaries, and he will go far to help you with something if you need it. It's important to him to show you that you can count on him and you matter to him. Sign number 5. He can be hot and cold. Again, this is the emotionally unavailable man. He is hot when he wants you, and then he can be cold for days or weeks. He smothers you with compliments and talks about how he missed you and how important you are to him, and then he disappears. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he is stable. His feelings don't change. He has no interest in playing with you. Sign number 6 is, it's always someone else's fault. For the emotionally unavailable man, he finds it difficult to handle conflict and to admit he is part of the responsibility and that he might be wrong too. He gets easily defensive, and when you hear him talk about conflicts he had in his life with family or co-workers or managers or friends and so on, it's always someone else's fault. It's never his responsibility. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he is able to admit his mistakes and take on his responsibility. He owns his mistakes and he apologizes. He doesn't see himself as flawless, and he's not afraid of having difficult conversations. He might not like it, but he knows it's important sometimes. Sign number 7. There is no tomorrow. When we are into the relationship, let's say 2 or 3 months, he still doesn't talk about future plans with you. There's no signs of wanting to plan a vacation or just a weekend somewhere. And he avoids talking about the relationship and exclusivity, and if you bring it up, he will say something like, let's just take it easy and see where this goes. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he wants to plan things with you in the future. He wants to maybe go on a one-day trip somewhere in the beginning, or he invites you for a weekend. He loves the idea of spending time with you, like a whole day or several days, and he literally wants to put you in his calendar, so he regularly makes sure that you have plans together. He also want to make sure that you are on the same page when it comes to exclusivity. So he is going to express his emotions to you and that he wants to have a serious relationship with you. Sign number 8. You are invisible to his friends. This is again the emotionally unavailable man, and here we are also talking about a bit into the relationship. It's not just the first 2 weeks or so, but he doesn't present you to any of his friends, and you might let him into your life, but he doesn't let you into his, and the same goes for his family. On the other hand, the emotionally available man, he will want to show you off. He will want his friends and family to know that he's dating you, and he is proud to have you by his side. So those were some important signs to look out for, and the questions you want to ask yourself now about the man that you are dating are: do I find it easy to connect emotionally with him? Do I feel valued and appreciated? Does he make an effort to see me and get to know me more? Does he check in with what I want and desire? Does he consider my emotions just as important as his? Do his words match his actions? And is he clear about wanting a committed relationship? And then down the line, when you know him better and you've been dating him for, let's say, 3 months, you want to ask yourself, are his emotions for me stable? Is he okay having a real conversation about the future? And does he want to let me into the rest of his life, introducing me to people that are close to him? So, next week I will dive into the question of why we keep falling for Mr. Unavailable. Why is it that in a room of 100 men, we go straight to the guy that's going to cause us the most heartbreak? So look out for that episode, and in the meantime, have a beautiful week. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and you want to get support from a coach on your love journey, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. You will find the link in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe, and I would love it if you would rate and review this podcast, and then you'll also help other women find it.